So, I'm standing there at the Thanksgiving table, holding a glass of ridiculously expensive wine that I brought. My dad's new wife, Susan, is in the middle of a full-on, Oscar-worthy performance, complete with crocodile tears streaming down her face, talking about their recent financial hardships. My dad, bless his heart, is looking at me with these big, sad, puppy dog eyes, the same ones he used when he told me my dog went to a farm upstate. He clears his throat and, in front of the whole extended family, asks me for a small loan to get them through the winter. A loan? From me. I just took a slow, deliberate sip of my wine, letting the silence hang in the air for a second too long. Then, I put the glass down, smiled the biggest, brightest smile I could manage, and said, loud enough for my hard-of-hearing grandma to catch every word, "You know, it's amazing what you can save for a down payment on a business when you don't have to pay for heating. Living in a garage for 3 years will really do that to you." The silence that followed was absolutely delicious. You could have heard a pin drop on the cheap laminate flooring they'd installed after selling my mom's hardwood for cash. My aunt's jaw was on the floor. Susan's fake tears dried up instantly, replaced by a look of pure rage. And my dad, he just deflated like a sad, forgotten birthday balloon. Yeah, he was definitely regretting it now. But let me tell you, this story doesn't start at that Thanksgiving dinner. It starts 5 years earlier, in a life that feels like it belonged to a different person. Before Susan, it was just me and my dad. My mom had passed away from cancer a few years prior, and the two of us had kind of figured out our own rhythm. I was 17, a straight-A student, captain of the debate team, and obsessed with coding. Our house wasn't huge, but it was home. My bedroom was my sanctuary. It was the biggest room besides the master, with a big window overlooking the backyard my mom had loved so much. It was filled with her memory, the bookshelf she built with my dad, the ridiculous collection of snow globes she'd collected from her travels. It was my safe space. Our relationship was solid. We weren't super emotional, but we were a team. We'd order pizza on Fridays and watch dumb action movies. He'd help me with my calculus homework, and I'd help him figure out his new smartphone. It was good. It was stable. Then he met Susan. At first, she seemed fine. She was bubbly, a little loud, but she made my dad laugh, and I hadn't seen him genuinely laugh like that in years. So, I was happy for him. I really was. But there were little red flags, you know? The way she'd casually mention the price of everything. The way her compliments always felt a little backhanded. She had 2 kids of her own, Josh, who was 15, and Ashley, 14. And let me tell you, these two were the poster children for entitlement. They'd look around our modest home like they were inspecting a dirty motel room. They'd complain about the brand of soda we had in the fridge. They were just unpleasant. But I was 17. I figured, I'm going to college in a year. I can put up with anything for a year. I just had to be polite, stay in my room, and everything would be fine. Oh, how naive I was. 6 months after they met, my dad announced they were getting married and Susan and her kids were moving in. It was fast, like suspiciously fast. But he was so happy. He was like a teenager again. So I smiled, said congratulations, and braced myself. The day they moved in was the day my life imploded. I was helping carry boxes when Susan gathered us all in the living room for a family meeting. She had this sickly sweet smile on her face as she looked around. "Okay, family," she chirped. "First things first, let's talk about sleeping arrangements. My 2 babies," she said, wrapping her arms around her 2 scowling teenagers, "need proper rooms where they can feel comfortable and settled. Ashley, sweetie, you can have this room here." She pointed directly at my bedroom door. I think I literally short-circuited. I just stared at her. "What? That's my room," I managed to stammer out. She waved a dismissive hand. "Well, yes, but it's the biggest one after ours, and Ashley is a young lady who needs her space. And Josh can take the guest room." I looked at my dad, expecting him to jump in and say, "Susan, that's insane." But he just stood there, shifting his weight, avoiding my eyes. "So, where am I supposed to sleep?" I asked, my voice trembling a little. Susan's smile got even wider. "Well, you're practically an adult. You're going to get the best room of all. You get your own private space, like a cool little bachelor pad. The garage. The garage. The cold, concrete, spider-filled garage where my dad kept his lawnmower and a bunch of old paint cans." I stared at my dad, my heart pounding in my ears. "Dad? Seriously?" And this is the moment that broke me for the first time. He finally looked at me, but his eyes were pleading. "It's just temporary, champ," he said, using a nickname he hadn't used in years. We'll put up a wall, get it insulated, put a rug down. It'll be like your own little apartment. It'll be fun. It was not fun. The promised renovation consisted of a single, thin sheet of drywall that didn't even reach the ceiling, put up by my dad and his buddy over a weekend. There was no insulation, no proper heating. They threw down a stained piece of remnant carpet that smelled like mildew. My bed was shoved against one wall, and my desk against the other. That was my bachelor pad. The first winter was brutal. I live in a state where it snows. A lot. I would wake up and be able to see my breath. I slept in 3 layers of clothing, a hoodie, and a beanie. I do my homework with numb fingers. I begged my dad to at least get me a proper space heater, but Susan said it was a fire hazard and a waste of electricity. Meanwhile, she bought Ashley a brand new bedroom set, a new laptop, and a flat-screen TV because her old one was too small for the room. My room. One day I came home from school to find that the beautiful, sturdy wooden desk my mom and I had picked out together was gone from my old room. The bookshelf she had built was also gone. I stormed into the house and found Susan in the kitchen. "Where's my furniture?" I demanded. She didn't even look up from her magazine. "Oh, that old stuff?" It was so dated. It didn't match Ashley's new aesthetic. I put it on the curb. "Some guy picked it up this morning. You should be happy it's going to a new home." I just stood there, speechless. It wasn't just furniture. It was one of the last tangible things I had of my mom, and she had just thrown it away. I looked at my dad, who was standing right there, making a sandwich. He just shrugged. "Susan knows best when it comes to decorating, son. It was just old wood." That's when I realized I wasn't a son anymore. I was an obstacle, an inconvenience in their perfect new family. The humiliation just kept escalating. I wasn't allowed to use the front door anymore. I had to use the side door that led into the garage so I didn't track dirt into the house. The food I bought with my own money from my part-time job at a grocery store would disappear from the fridge, only for me to find the empty wrappers in Josh's trash can. Then came the rent. I had just turned 18. I was working almost 30 hours a week, saving every penny I could for a car and for college expenses. One evening, Susan sat me down at the kitchen table. My dad was there, of course, staring intently at the salt shaker. "So," she began, in her most reasonable-sounding voice, "now that you're a legal adult and you have a job, your father and I think it's time you learn some responsibility. We think it's fair that you start contributing to the household." I knew where this was going. "Contributing how?" "We'll start you off easy. $200 a month. For rent. Rent. For the privilege of freezing to death in their garage, while her 2 perfect children lived for free in the main house, in rooms that were once mine and my family's." "Are you kidding me?" I asked, looking directly at my dad. "You want me to pay rent for the garage?" He finally looked up. "It's about responsibility, son. It's how the real world works." The real world. I was shaking with anger. In the real world, parents don't steal their kid's bedroom, give it to a stepsister, and then charge him rent for the garage. Susan slammed her hand on the table. "Don't you use that tone with me. We are giving you a roof over your head. You should be grateful. I paid it. I was beaten down and had nowhere else to go. I just told myself, 1 more year. Get your college acceptance letters, get a scholarship, and you're out." I paid the $200 every month, on time, in cash. I handed it directly to my dad, hoping he'd see how ridiculous it was. He never did. He'd just take the money and hand it to Susan. The breaking point, the thing that finally severed the last thread of hope I had for my father, came about 3 months before my high school graduation. It was time to start accepting college offers and figuring out the finances. My mom, being the planner she was, had set up a college fund for me when I was born. It wasn't a fortune, but it was supposed to be around $20,000. It was my ticket out. I went to the bank with my dad to get the paperwork started. I sat down with the bank manager, a woman I'd known since I was a kid. She pulled up the account, and her smile just faded. She looked at my dad, then back at me, with an expression of pure pity. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "but this account was closed 6 months ago. The funds were withdrawn." The world just went fuzzy. I couldn't breathe. I looked at my dad. He was pale, sweating. "Dad? What is she talking about?" He couldn't look at me. He just stared at his hands. We needed it, son. Susan's car broke down. It was an expensive fix. And we wanted to take the kids to Disney World. Bond as a new family. $20,000. My future. My one escape route. Gone. For a used minivan and a trip to Disney World that I wasn't even invited on. "You have to understand," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "We're a family now. We have to share. You're smart. You can get student loans. It builds character. Builds character. That was his answer for everything. That was the phrase he used to justify his complete and utter lack of a spine. I didn't say another word. I got up from the chair, walked out of the bank, and kept walking. I didn't go home. I went to a friend's house. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. The hurt, the sadness, it all crystallized into a cold, hard diamond of resolve. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I wasn't going to wait for a rescue. I was going to save myself. I made a plan. I was already working one job. I got a second one, washing dishes at a diner late at night. I saved money like a maniac. Every single dollar. The rent I was paying them? I thought of it as an investment in my future, my get the hell out of here fund. I stopped talking to them unless absolutely necessary. I was a ghost in their house. I'd slip in late at night through the side door and leave before anyone was awake. They didn't seem to notice or care. The night of my high school graduation, they threw a small party. For them, not for me. It was for their friends, to show what a wonderful, blended family they were. I stood in the corner for a few minutes, then slipped out, packed a duffel bag with my few remaining belongings, and walked out of that garage for the last time. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It just said, "You were right. It's time I built some character. Don't look for me." And for 5 years, they didn't. They called a few times, but I changed my number. I was completely off the grid. Those 5 years were a grind. I used the money I saved to rent a tiny room in a shared apartment with 3 other guys. I didn't go to a traditional 4-year college. I couldn't afford it, thanks to them. Instead, I took online courses in web development and marketing. I poured all the anger and hurt and betrayal into my work. I was fueled by the memory of sleeping in the cold, of seeing my mom's desk on the curb. I was determined to build a life so successful that they would choke on their regret. I started a small e-commerce business from my bedroom. It was slow at first, but it grew. And then it exploded. By the time I was 23, I was making more money than I had ever dreamed of. I bought a small condo. I started investing. I built a life for myself from scratch. A life they had no part in. I'd get occasional updates from a sympathetic aunt. She told me things weren't going so well for Dad and Susan. He'd been laid off from his job. Susan, who had never worked a day in her life, was a compulsive spender. They were fighting all the time. They had to refinance the house. They were drowning in debt. My aunt said they'd started asking about me, wondering where I was, how I was doing. What they really meant was, "Does he have any money?" I ignored it all, until my aunt called and begged me to come to Thanksgiving. "Just to keep the peace," she'd said. "He's your father." A part of me wanted to say no. But another, darker part of me, that part wanted to see them. I wanted them to see me. So I agreed. And that brings us back to that disastrous Thanksgiving dinner. After I dropped my little garage bombshell, the room erupted. Susan started shrieking. "You ungrateful liar. We gave you everything. How dare you make up these horrible stories?" I just looked at her calmly. "Is it a lie that you threw out my dead mother's furniture? Is it a lie that you made me pay $200 a month in rent for an uninsulated garage? Is it a lie," and here I turned to my father, "that you drained my $20,000 college fund to buy her a car and take her kids to Disney?" My dad just stared at his plate, his face ashen. He couldn't deny it. I stood up, placing my napkin on the table. "You didn't ask for a loan," I said, my voice cold and clear. "You asked for a handout. You feel entitled to my success, just like you felt entitled to my bedroom, my furniture, and my future. The answer is no. It will always be no." I walked out of that house and never looked back. My phone blew up for the next few days. Voicemails from my dad, sobbing, apologizing, begging. Texts from Susan, full of threats and insults. I blocked both their numbers. Some family members called me an unforgiving jerk. Others called to say, "Finally, someone said it." I kept the second group and cut out the first. You learn who your real family is in moments like that. About 6 months later, my aunt told me they'd lost the house to foreclosure. The shame and the financial pressure were too much. Susan left him. She took her kids and went to live with her sister in another state. Last I heard, Josh and Ashley are working dead-end jobs, still living at home, blaming the world for their problems. Some habits die hard, I guess. My dad sent me one last email. It was long and rambling, full of self-pity and excuses. He said he was sorry, but it was all buried under a mountain of, "I was just trying to keep my new wife happy." I never responded. There was nothing left to say. So yeah, that's how getting kicked out into a freezing garage turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. It taught me that sometimes the only person you can rely on is yourself. And it taught me that success, true success, isn't just about money. It's about building a life you're proud of, surrounded by people who genuinely love and respect you.